Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also a best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another great guest. On the show, we interview celebrities, entrepreneurs, business CEOs, athletes, and artists to find out their path to success, how they're able to overcome challenges, adversity, of course, their keys to success. And today's guest is somebody who's been helping lots of people, hundreds of people all around the world, really strike a balance between living well today and also planning for the future. He's been working with individuals and families and small businesses, really help them set their goals, manage their assets, and of course, working towards their goals and their future and their success as well. He has over 25 plus years of experience in the financial planning industry, and he's also the author of the book, Your Future Is Now, and a future book coming up, which is Retirement Planning. So please welcome financial advisor, author, and speaker, Mr. Jeffrey PANIK.
Thanks so much for having me today, Fong.
Hey, thanks for being here. Always a joy
Yes.
speaking with people who are good at what they do and who also likes to share what they're good at to help other people succeed. For someone like yourself who's been helping lots of people on really succeeding in their financial planning and also their financial future, is this something that you've always wanted to do? Like when you came out of school, it was like I'm doing financial stuff.
No, it's part of the reason why I got into this business is probably because of how little I knew or what I wanted to do when I got out of college. I a pretty good story just talking about, people getting broadsided by student loans and the student debt that we have right now today. I was about ready to get out of college and I received a letter from Sally Mae. In my ignorance, I thought it was a magazine subscription service, and they're actually a loan servicer for student loans. And it said that I would owe about $1,000 a month for the next 10 years. And that was probably about 30 plus years ago, 35 years ago, and didn't know what I wanted to do. And ended up sitting there thinking about what in the world I was going to do. And I ended up going in the Army, and the Army had a program where they paid off my student loans. And, I had in the Army, I had a fair amount of time to reflect about the things I probably could have done differently in college. And I was the first one to go to college in my family. So I didn't really have, any real mentors or people that I could turn to that would help provide a reasonable direction. So I think I drifted a little bit in college and, ended up in the military. And, from that, I realized I needed to get ahead of my finances and really started to put a focus on it at that point. And when I got out of the military, I started working in the financial services industry. That's been about 25 years ago. And it has vastly changed from when I began to where it is today.
Why do you think that focusing on finance is not something that schools do very much? I mean, it's been so many years. We've been talking about this kind of stuff for so long, yet you don't see them implementing anything into the curriculum about planning for the future, what courses to take, and maybe be a little bit more aware about maybe interest rates and compound and all that kind of stuff. Why is that not out there?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons for it, and a lot of it is just the education system. They're used to providing just a template to get the student from the start when they start in pre-K or kindergarten through high school, and there's not a whole lot of thought about your finances. And Price Waterhouse did a study a while back, and it was a millennials, and they asked them a lot of just basic financial questions, and only about 24% had a basic financial knowledge. And so, it's really a travesty, and I would say almost a crisis. Only about 22 states have programs or putting programs in place right now that are mandating a financial literacy course to graduate. But a lot of those have waivers. And, even those, they don't really focus on things that are important, like, how do you even write a check? How do you get how do you even find a car? And making sure that you understand even, something as basic as you're getting out of high school, going into college, how much do you need to take out in student loans? And what does that mean 10 or 20 years from now?
Mhm. It's very fascinating that when you said that was it 24% of the people of the kids actually knew a little bit about
Yeah,
finance?
a little, yes.
Exactly.
So
And
that's what, yeah.
and out of that 24%, I'm assuming that 90% of that is from what their parents told them. And
Ex
even the
ex
parents
exactly.
don't really know that much about finances, unfortunately.
No, and I think a lot of times a lot of times parents in particular are somewhat it's an awkward position, and really I like to say the lessons that you learn in finance and a lot of times in life are from bad experiences, or failure. And a lot of people, just don't like to talk about that, especially to their children, where their children are typically, they want them to look up to them. But I think, if you can just be more direct and communicate, and I've said, the cornerstone of relationships, the cornerstone of finance really is communication. If you can communicate in an honest fashion, you will be successful in life. And I think you can find people that can help you along the way as well.
Also in society, there's this mindset that you don't talk about money. You can't flat out ask somebody, still, how much do you make? Oh, look, this house is yours. How much is that house worth? It almost seems like it's a no-no subject. How does one get away from that mentality? I'm like, the thing
Yeah.
is, in order for you to talk about and help people with finances, you have to break through that mindset and get people to really talk about, okay, here's the situation, here's what we're talking about, here's our problem, here's our assets and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, and part of it is that most cases where someone comes for help, normally they just don't have one small issue. Normally it's multiple issues, and when you have multiple issues, whether you have debt, you haven't saved enough, you've just had children, you're trying to figure out how am I going to pay for their school, and how am I going to buy a house, and all these things that everyone thinks about. You have there's packed on top of things are packed on top of one another, and it's very hard to unbox that. And I'm a proponent of saying you want to break it up into realistic tasks, and you want to form habits to try to get through each one. And really it's a matter of triage, I would say, almost, where you want to look at what is the most glaring, what is the thing that needs to be fixed the first. Start with that and then work from there. And it's easier said than done, though, because even if you know what's a matter, you don't always have the tools really to fix it. And, I look back 25 years ago, it was very difficult to get information. You go to the library, go to the bookstore, try to get some books and try to figure it out. Now, it's the polar opposite where there's more information than you could ever imagine. You go to Google and type in a financial topic, you get like 330 million hits.
Mhm.
And the problem now is it's over information, and really what you want to do is try to focus on your specific situation and circumstances and work through that.
Mhm. And also with so much information out there, you also have to find the
Yes,
right one that fits you kind of thing, right? Because
exactly.
there's so many different strategies.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and
strategy.
unfortunately, the thing is, if you want to find something bad about a certain strategy, for sure you could find it. Because it's always it could work for certain people and may not work for you. So how does one navigate through that kind of issue?
Yeah, and I mean, I use the example of real estate. More and more people want to get into buying rental properties, and that's a great way to invest, and that's a great way to grow your net worth and your long term wealth. The challenge really is, though, a lot of times you have to work through a lot of things to be able to do that. Especially when you have kids coming out with 60, 70, $80,000 in student loans, and I look back and say, really it's really a matter it starts early. The earlier you can start and educating, whether I use the example, we're coming up to the holidays, and it's really a matter of if rather than being everybody being on their phone, well, maybe play life, look at Monopoly, these games, because the games, I think, in a lot of ways were set up to help educate people about these topics that we're talking about that nobody really communicates about.
And unfortunately, they don't go, hey, this game of life is actually pretty accurate to what's
Yes,
going on in real life.
it is. If you take a step back and you look at life, the game, it's a lot like real life. It's maybe a bit exaggerated when you start having about 8 or 9 kids, but it's a matter really of making decisions, and having the why in the road and understanding what each direction means. And we've moved from having, I believe, in the 60s, 70s, people having a trade or a skill and really having going to the trade side or going to the university side, but really having a focus of understanding what the outcome is. And I think the education system really has lost the outcome. What really needs to be refocused is making people come out and being in a position to be successful. And it's the opposite, I think, unfortunately, for a lot of people. They're just shouldered and saddled with so much debt, and not, in a lot of cases, not really sure what they want to do. It just is really putting them at a disadvantage to start really out life.
Mhm. What was it about uh, being a financial advisor that triggered you saying, this is what I want to do? Like you
Yes.
probably came out of what do you call it? You came out of the army
Garment, yes.
and
Yeah.
then, okay, this is what I want. Like, why was it that you wanted to get into finances?
Well, so that gets into another barrier. I mean, I still, when I was getting out of the army, wasn't sure what I really wanted to do, but I knew I had friends that worked in the financial services industry, and I went to a company and they had a training program. And I'm a firm believer, regardless of whatever age you are, you should always continue to learn. And so I think the thing that is most interesting that I've enjoyed the most with my business is the fact that you have to continue to learn, and you have, things are constantly changing and evolving, and it is a matter of trying to stay on top of it as best you can, for for the betterment of your clients, as well as just to help people make informed decisions.
My one of my understandings about planning for your financial future is being consistent. Sometimes the most reliable products out there are not the sexy ones, are not the ones that
Now,
big growth and big drops and whatnot. It's the ones that are very consistent in growth. And sometimes it's very easy. If you go and put in $100, $200 a month on a consistent basis over 20, 30 years, you could end up retiring with $1 million or more kind of thing. Very easy, consistent. Why is it that it's so difficult to get that into the minds of the masses where, you know what, it's not hard to have a good planned retirement?
yeah, in some ways I look at it and I say, America, they call it a consumer-led economy. Well, a lot of it's led by debt.
Mhm.
And that gets back to the fact that if you go, the influencers, everything is focused on, what material objects that you have. And a lot of people spend above their means. And I've said, the main thing that we need to get back to is really just having a budget. People need to have budgets, and it doesn't have to be something that's super detailed, and it doesn't have to be one specific type of budget. I really look at it and say, what you want to do is find something that you can reasonably stick to, and that you can allocate funds towards savings. And you really want to look at what you're spending versus what you're saving. And really, especially in the case of couples, when you have a household formation where you have two people get together, and whether they're just in a long-term relationship or whether they get married, there's a lot of savings there, but they have to communicate that. And I think if you can develop a budget and form a habit of savings, when the money comes in from your employer, it have an account set up where it goes out right away to your savings account or your investment account without you even thinking about it or being able to spend it.
Mhm. What is your magic formula? There's lots of out there where people go, okay, you get your paycheck, 10% here, 10% here, in all these little jars. What's your formula? What's your strategy for people to kind of divvy up their income?
Yeah, so I mean, there's all kinds of various, there's in my book, I have about 5 different strategies that you can use. And really, I really look and say the first thing that you need to do, if and this is for anyone, is you need to look at your credit card and your bank accounts, and you look at the things that you're spending on a monthly basis. And if it's a couple, they need to look at what they're spending, because you'd be amazed at the number of people that have at least two or three of the same streaming subscriptions. So each of them, so it's like some of these things you can just put together and just have one. And
Mm.
if you just have one, you can generate a fair amount of savings. And the same thing with your home insurance, your auto, all these things. If you can benefit from being a couple, and a lot of people just don't take advantage of that. And so what I really try to preach is looking through on a consistent basis your overall spending and adjusting as you can reallocating it to savings, and then also at the same time looking at debt and making, if you have debt, you want to prioritize it and understand, what is, we'll say, good debt and what is bad debt. And that's really a term that I don't think all debt is bad. If you're starting a business, if you're getting a home, and even in certain situations where you need to get a vehicle, you just can't come out of pocket out of college, and expect to buy a vehicle. It's the things like credit cards, high interest credit cards, and a lot of other pieces that you accumulate, and in some cases even the student loans, where there's no return on that money.
Mhm. You mentioned savings. Now, the thing is, lots of people put money into the bank and they hope that
Mhm.
that grows based on whatever percentage that bank gives them. However, a lot of cases is that that savings interest is less than what inflation is. So they're
Yeah,
actually losing money with it sitting in their savings account.
yeah, exactly. And really, what you want to do is you want to target a certain, we would call it a rainy day fund or an emergency fund, and it's usually going to be 3 to 6 months of your expenses. And you're going to want to put that away. And at least two or three of that, you want to keep a month liquid in, say, an operating account or what we call like a checking account. The other 2 or 3 months, you want to put into a high interest savings account. And you can go to Bankrate. There's Nerd Wallet. There's a bunch of different websites, but what you want to try to do is get as much interest on that money and still keep it liquid. With money above that, that's when you want to start looking and saying, well, do I need to pay down some debt? Do I need to put money aside for, an upcoming wedding or something like that, where it's a shorter term savings goal? And then with anything above that, you really need to look and say, well, am I matching? You always want to make sure you're matching your employer contributions. If you're lucky enough where your employer gives you a match on the money you put in, you want to make sure you're taking advantage of that. And then above that, you just want to make sure that you're saving in a smart fashion.
Mhm. At what point do should people start considering putting money into, let's say, stocks and real estate or whatever it is that they are looking to, or crypto, whatever it is?
Yeah, and that's really the thing. I mean, it's really based upon what your risk tolerance is and what your specific circumstances are and your situation. What could be good for, and it's not, sometimes, people used to look back and say, well, if you're coming up to retirement, you probably shouldn't have money in, super growth stocks, grow things that move up and down like a roller coaster. That's not always the case. Really it is based upon the individual and what their risk tolerance is. And that really is something that's really personal to them. It's hard to make really generalizations. It's more of an issue of, we talk about diversification, which doesn't always help, but really, it goes back to the old eggs in the basket analogy. If you have too much in one thing, it's going to usually end up biting you. So it's always a good concept or good thought process to spread out your savings and your investments.
How would you rank people's risk level or risk tolerances? Um,
Well,
like how do you go, okay, well, based on your personality, blah, 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 you're at this risk
yeah.
tolerance.
Yeah, and so I think typically we'll have someone do a risk questionnaire, and and a lot of times it's more behavioral. I mean, I think finance is more. There's a lot of psychology involved, and risk tolerance changes. You don't want it to change with the market. And that also happens a lot. If you have a big, where the market drops, people get very anxious and they pull their money in a lot of cases at the wrong time. And so really, we say it's all about staying the course. You want to stay on the course, even if you get into choppy and rough waters. And, I think that's why if you can have someone, a financial advisor, someone that's trusted that you work with, it can go a long way to help you work through those bumps in the road and, the occasional hurricane that comes through.
Mhm. Sometimes risk isn't perceived the same for everybody.
Yeah.
Certain people might look at a certain thing as, oh, that's really risky. But another person goes, well, if you look at it this way, it's actually not as risky as you think. In fact, the reason that you pick it is actually more risky than
Yes.
not.
Well, yeah, and
So,
and that's what, and one of the things that we hadn't seen more recently was inflation. So, inflation is really, really robs you if you're not taking on some level of risk to get a higher return over the long run than what you might get in just sitting in a checking account, because your money just deteriorates in terms of value based upon the more inflation that there is. And it's always a fine line. And especially in the case of couples, it's important to communicate about each other's, how they feel about risk. And that's often the biggest challenge or conversations about money with couples. And it's usually one of the biggest causes of divorce because, you have two people often that come from very different backgrounds. They say opposites attract. That's good from a relationship standpoint, but not really from a money standpoint. And so, one of the pieces that people really need to do is at least start to look at maybe putting some of their finances together before they really go too far down we'll say the wedding aisle, to make sure that they're on the same page about what they're doing.
Mhm. When it comes to like looking at certain investments and taking a look at different risk levels and whatnot, how do you talk to clients where basically you've educated them, but it's just that little mindset tweak for them to accept that risk that in their mind is risky, but in your mind is not risky? What is it that you help them either look at or change their mindset or explain more? What do you do?
Well, I think in some ways, it used to be you would just buy stocks, or you would put money in certain places, and you wouldn't instantaneously, you wouldn't have a phone, that would tell you what exact price it is at any given day, and you
You
wouldn't
have to
have
wait every
articles.
month.
Yeah, you wouldn't have things tabbed on your phone when there's an alert that goes off for a specific, stock or investment that you own. And I think part of it gets lost where, it's very difficult, to kind of take a step back from it. But I think it's important to do that and really look at history and understand that there's going to be bad days, but there's a lot of good days as well. And the more time you have before you need the money, it gives you an opportunity. We'll say if we have a big market decline, if you're putting money in every month, it's an opportunity to buy the shares or buy the investment at a lower price where, over time, if it's performing properly, it should go up over time.
Let's imagine three hypothetical cases, people of different levels of their lives, and they are coming to you with a blank slate. Okay, one group is the people coming right out of high school. Okay, another group is they just got married. They're getting ready for the rest of their lives. And the last group is the people who are okay. I'm nearing retirement. I'm in my 40s and 50s. What should these groups start to look at if they haven't looked at anything previously?
Yes. So, those are groups that are in completely, really, really different spaces.
Mhm.
And, a lot of times I find, especially with people that are coming up to retirement, they just get used to the income coming in and then they allocate it and, they just kind of forget about it. Well, getting into retirement, you don't have that income coming in from employment. And, you have to draw off of your, pension, your fixed, the income that you're going to be getting, as well as your savings. And so, it's more of an issue of, if I can put the groups together and have a conversation about, the groups that were coming up to retirement, they would tell the person that's getting out of high school, well, I would have started saving a whole lot earlier, so you need to really think about putting money away earlier. And I'm sure the couple, if they're a couple approaching retirement, they would sit there and tell the couple that's getting married, it's probably a good idea to focus on savings. And, the other side of it too is with education. I have a lot of parents that spend a lot of money on their children's education, and they, in a lot of cases, will neglect their retirement savings. And I think if I can go back and say, from history and just looking in general, I think one of the things is, I look at is really you have to put yourself first and your retirement first. It's kind of like being on an airplane and putting the mask on before you can help anyone. It's the same way with, if you don't save properly, then, you're going to put yourself and you and your family in a situation that isn't good when you potentially can't work anymore.
Mhm. When it comes to teaching kids about finances and money and whatnot, is there an age that's too early, or do you start off right at the beginning?
No, so I have in the book, the last chapter is really it's called 15 foundational tips, and really it starts at when they're very young, and I would say the first step is to start saving for them when they're born. Set up a 529 account or a savings account and start dedicating money to that every month. So whether they go to college or not, there's going to be money there for them that you can use for them for their welfare and their benefit. And then I go through and say, some of the things I mentioned before. You play games with them. You talk to them. You have them do internships. You have them do volunteer work. I use the example of someone that says, well, they want to be a nurse, but they've never been to a hospital. They've never, they've been in a doctor's office, obviously, but they've never seen the inner workings of a hospital. And they go there and they realize, well, I don't like this environment. Well, it's probably best to maybe not go the direction and have that as a major.
Mhm. It's actually very fascinating to see how kids react to certain things
Mhm.
too. I had a blast bringing my 4-year-old to a rental property that was prepping for the next people, and she just had so many questions. Like, why are they moving here? Well, are they nice? Do you know them? Like, and it was just so many questions. I'm like, oh, I need to ask that question during my screening process next time.
No, and I think curiosity, I think especially with finance and investments, it's so important, and it's very easy to get caught up in the complexity and the big words, and then just really shut down. And the easier that you can keep things, and the more you can relate it to, we would say the activities of daily living, where if you're going to buy something, if you're a kid and you want to buy a candy bar, well, you know what, you have to have money for that.
Mhm.
And so the way to get money is you have to work. That has changed a bit in our society, but that is kind of some of those lessons you get into kind of reality, or even bigger purchase items. Rather than just giving the kid the money, it might be a good idea to have them do chores, do something to add value where they can take away that they actually were productive, when they actually buy the item as opposed to just buying it because you gave them the money.
Exactly. One thing you mentioned before is the importance of really reaching out to like an advisor, somebody who can actually you can trust to work with you on your finances and your future planning and whatnot. There's a lot of them out there. You're
Yes,
one of
yes.
the best ones out there. How does one pick the right one for them or screen
Yeah.
out all the ones that are, not as good?
No, so I mean, I would say I compare it to like a chemistry test, if you will. What and a lot of times, I mean, typically, other clients will refer friends often to advisors, and just because the two people are friends, don't mean they have the same personality. And so it's a psychology, chemistry type of business where you have to really be on the same page. And that's why I always tell people, if you're looking for an advisor, you want to find one. You want to look for someone that's a certified financial planner or has similar designations, that can act as a fiduciary on your behalf. And you want to find two or three or four people, or groups to interview to see the one that fits best for what you're trying to do.
Mhm.
And if you can do that, and there's certain groups that focus on certain, we'll say, they may focus on dentists. Well, if you're a dentist, you may want to go to a group, or interview a couple groups that focus on that specific profession.
Mhm.
And so really it's a matter of finding a person that you're comfortable with, that through thick and thin, they're going to be there for you, and make every effort on your behalf.
Mhm. Chemistry is one thing, knowledge and competency is another thing. Do you have certain questions that you would actually recommend people ask during that interview process so that they go, oh yeah, that answer doesn't sound very right. I'll
No,
probably pass.
yeah, so I would say the first thing, you always want to make sure that before people start making, you never want to go into a meeting and someone just start making blind recommendations. You really want to have someone that you give them your portfolio or what you're looking to try to do, or you talk through it, and they can come back to you and give you. I always say it's like, you always want to have two or three different different options, and the more, you want to make an informed decision, and you want somebody that can help you do that. And if someone comes to you immediately and starts trying to sell you on one specific thing, that is like something that the bells should be going off or the alarm should go off. You always want someone that will try to guide you in the right direction, but not push you. And you always want someone as well, that would be independent, where they're not pushing a specific product or company. And that gets back to even the Google searches. You go on Google, probably about the first 5 or 6 searches are sponsored. They're not doing it for free. They're trying to sell you something.
Mhm.
And so, you want someone that you can find that will treat it as a relationship and not a sale.
Mhm. That's one of my I don't know if you can call that pet peeve, but those could call them financial advisors that work at a bank.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, not really. You're just pushing that product a little bit more. Um, but regardless, like the thing is, when people are open to listening to other people's advices and then making the right decision based on their risk tolerances and
Yes.
background and whatnot, at least that's the first step. For someone like yourself who has a lot of clients, and I'm sure a lot of people who wants to work with you, you too also have certain requirements as to what clients to pick and which clients not to work with. What is the ideal candidate for you in order for you to be able to work with them?
Well, it's really, I would say, and in my business, it's almost like I can look at it almost like you can look at it as like a teacher, if you will. You don't have to teach a lot of times people will come to me with a lot of experience investing and a pretty thorough understanding, but it's really a matter of managing who's driving the car, if you will.
Mhm.
And you want to make sure that you're just not sitting there, blindly helping the person creating more problems for themselves than they had when they before they came to you.
Mhm.
And so, I look at it really, every person or family is unique and they have their own set of challenges, as well as we would say advantages, and it's a matter of kind of putting something together that's specific for them, as opposed to something that's, I would say cookie cutter, that's just very general.
Mhm.
And so, again, it's really a matter of having an honest conversation and seeing whether or not it could make sense to have a business relationship.
Mhm. For people out there who are already doing investments on their own and looking for certain things to invest in, what's your crystal ball? What are you anticipating coming up in the next few years that really people need to keep an eye on?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say you always want to beware of anyone that has a crystal ball. If I would say, if I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. It's really a matter of, you want to understand why you're putting the money in that you're putting in. Whether it's whatever investment is, why are you doing that, and what do you want your goal to be? And it's a savings is a habit, but at the same time, it's important to understand why you're putting the money in. What's your goal? And if you can understand and define the goal, and you can see the money growing over time, hopefully, it will hopefully inspire you to add more, save more, add more goals. The easiest way to start a goal is to finish, a previous goal. And because again, it's all about momentum, and momentum with savings and just with goals in general. It's a matter, I say a lot of times, there's different ways to pay off debt. One of the ways that, sometimes it's very, very difficult to even start. One of the ways to do it is just start focusing on some of the smaller, if you have multiple pieces of debt, start focusing on the smaller pieces, because if you can pay one off, it can really put you in a good position, or feeling behaviorally good, to tackle that next debt.
You mentioned your book a few times. What was it that inspired you to get that book out there?
Yeah, so it was really my experience going through school. I did reasonably well in school, but I was very ill-equipped. I would say financially illiterate. Like a lot of people getting out. If you're not taught by your family, and not guided in terms of direction, in terms of how to save, you know, even all these things that are just very difficult. You just, and you graduate, whether it's from high school, from college, trade school, you graduate and you're just expected to know how to do all these things. And, that is the one thing when I was looking to write a book, I said, well, what is the one group that I could probably help? I was looking to help, and it was really young adults because I feel in a lot of cases they're really at a disadvantage, and unfortunately, in a lot of cases they learn by making mistakes that if they would have just been educated properly, they wouldn't have made. Whether it's you mentioned before, just putting all their money in a checking account and not getting any interest, or just taking out too much debt, or buying a car that they can't afford. And there's all these different pieces that if you're just educated and informed, you're not always going to make the right decisions, but it'll help you at least get going down the right road.
Mhm. Near the beginning there, you also mentioned that when you came out, you didn't have anybody to really look up to learn about the financial stuff. However, I would assume that after a while, you did surround yourself with other individuals who were able to either guide you along or mentor you along.
Yeah, and I think that regardless of what regardless of finance or business, whatever you're doing, the one unfortunate thing with COVID and hopefully coming out of COVID now is that there was a lack of communication where you're sitting there in the same room as someone, and in the case where if you can find someone that that you want to emulate or that is in the business you want to be in, and you just ask them to go to lunch, you'd be surprised. I've always said, people love to talk about themselves. And so you'd be surprised people that if you ask to lunch or breakfast, they would take you up on it. And, if you can find a few people like that, where they can tell you, what they did right, but more importantly, what they did wrong, that is invaluable.
Mhm. You've given a lot of insight, lots of different tips, and the importance of saving, importance of having people around you that actually you want to emulate. If you were to be put on the world stage again, what is that final big message that you want everybody to remember Jeffrey for?
Well, I would say that, the message that I would say is that, you know, everyone doesn't start. I look at life as almost like a race. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Everyone doesn't start out at the same place, but the benefit of our society is, if you're willing to work, willing to learn, and you're willing to learn from your failures, anything is possible.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. Great words to live by. Before I let you go, I'm going to give you five quick rapid fire questions. Give me the first
Okay.
in mind. You're stranded on a deserted island. One food to eat for the rest of your life. No consequence.
I would say, well, I mean, no consequences. I would say chicken wings or pizza.
Ah,
So,
good choice. Hollywood calls and goes, "Hey Jeffrey, we love your story, very inspirational. We would love to do a biopic of you. Who would you cast to play you?"
that's a good question. I would have to think about that. That's a tough one. I would say I have to pass on that one. I'm not sure.
Okay,
So
mysterious figure shows up at your door
mysterious,
and
yeah,
goes, "Hey."
mysterious. It'll be like what is the show with the hidden singer? It'll be
The
like that. So masked
masked
singer.
actor shows up
Yes,
at your door and goes,
yes,
"Hey buddy,
exactly.
I got
I,
cast to play
you
you."
know what? You know what I say? I've been married long enough. I would say I'd let my wife pick out the actor. So,
Awesome. So this actor shows up at your door and goes, "Hey, buddy, I got cast to play you. Let's hang out. Let's have a good time, so that he could get to know you a little bit more." Where would you take this individual for a night out?
I would probably take them because I'm from Pittsburgh originally, and so if I could take them to a Pittsburgh Steelers game, I think they would have fun. So,
Awesome.
for a night out.
All right. You're going on a road trip in a car, and there's only one song that plays on repeat. What is that song that does not annoy you?
Oh, if it doesn't annoy me, I mean, after a certain point, all the songs that annoy me, I would say I would probably do like a Chris Stapleton, or I don't even necessarily mind like some Prince songs. So like a mix of the two. I have like very strange. My wife thinks I have extremely strange music skills or listening skills, I should say, in terms of what I like. So a little
Uh,
bit of both.
all right. And one final one before I get there. Give me a number from one to five.
I would say three.
One, two, three. So the word is ribbons.
Okay.
If you had to use the word ribbons as a metaphor for success, how is success like ribbons?
Well, I think, the more successful you are, the more ribbons you get. But it's in whatever it's a matter of being successful and accumulating whether it's, you just do right by people, and you have people that are your advocates out there for you in your business. Or, it's if you're successful, build whatever type of business, you're more than likely going to build your assets and your net worth, and hopefully that will translate into you providing to charities and your family.
I see that. So that's how success is like ribbons.
Yes.
Any final words from you? And also, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you and get your book?
Sure. I would say, if you're thinking about, where do I even start? The biggest thing is to go on, whether it's my book or just starting to research and just starting to look at things and work through and take one step at a time and one day at a time. You can't fix all of your issues financially in a weekend. It's a matter of coming up with a plan that you can fix, you know, each one over a period of time, that's achievable. And you can always reach me. I have a couple websites, balancewealthpartners.com as well as jeffreypanic.com on the book. And I'm always available as an advocate and provide feedback.
Awesome. And also with regards to taking it one step at a time, it's a mindset shift to
Yes.
be
Yes.
open to different opportunities and investments and whatnot. So yeah, very, very important. Also, when's your next book coming out?
So it'll be out in September of next year. So it'll be out, and it's mainly for pre-retirees, but it's similar. It's what I'm trying to do is just provide really a blueprint, or it's a big puzzle, regardless of where you're at. Whether you mentioned someone coming out of high school, a couple that just got married, or someone coming up to retirement, they all have unique issues and goals. But a lot of times it's hard to figure out how to put that, to paper, and how to get to the other side and reach your goals. And
Awesome.
so that's what I'm trying for with the books.
Well, congratulations on
Thank
the
you.
uh, eventual launch of that book in
Yes.
September, and I'm sure a lot of
Yes.
you are looking forward to it. So, everybody, make sure that you connect with Jeffrey here and also pick up his books. He also has some videos online as well, lots of great
Mhm.
content. So, make sure you connect with him. And yes, until next time, I'm Fong. He's Jeffrey. Today is the day to unlock your peak potential. We'll see you later.